Atlanta, a city that never sleeps, a place where dreams are made and sometimes destroyed. In a quiet apartment complex on the city's west side lived Marcus Robinson and his wife, Angela. To anyone who knew them, they were the kind of couple you'd look at and smile. The kind of love people hope to find one day. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, make sure to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone special, and subscribe to Dark Case Files daily for more incredible tales. Marcus was 34, a high school history teacher, kind, funny, respected by everyone. His students called him Mr. R, the man who made history sound alive. Angela was a freelance photographer, free-spirited, creative, with a camera that never left her hands. Her photos told stories of people and places most of us overlook. Together, they made sense. Two souls who had built a small, beautiful world for themselves. Soft piano fades under the voice. Every morning, Marcus would wake before dawn, make coffee for two, and kiss her forehead before heading to school. And every night, Angela would be there waiting by the window, waving when his car pulled in. To their friends, they were inseparable. To each other, they were home. But on a rainy Tuesday night in May, that home turned into a crime scene. It started like any other evening. Marcus was grading papers in the living room, while Angela sat by the window, capturing photos of the rain sliding down the glass. You could hear her hum softly between camera clicks. Marcus smiled and said, "Babe, close the window. You'll catch a cold." She laughed. "Just one more shot. The rain looks too good tonight." That was the last laugh he ever heard from her. Because somewhere, just across the street, in the darkness of a nearby rooftop, a shadow had taken position. A man with a rifle. Watching, waiting. A flicker of light from the rifle's scope caught the storm for a split second, and then a single shot. Glass shattered. Angela gasped, and before Marcus could even react, she fell into his arms. Blood spilled across his shirt. He screamed her name once, twice, over and over, shaking her, praying for her to breathe. But she didn't. With trembling hands, Marcus called 911. The words barely left his mouth. "My wife's been shot. Please, please hurry. She's not moving." He pressed his hands to her wound, whispering through tears, "Stay with me, baby. Please." The operator tried to keep him calm, but the sound of the rain drowned everything. By the time the police arrived, Angela Robinson was gone. What followed next would destroy Marcus's life. The police swarmed the apartment, cameras flashing, boots stomping. They looked around, broken glass, one body, one husband covered in blood. To them, the case was already solved. Detective Harlan, the lead investigator, took one look at Marcus and said, "Sir, I need you to step outside." Marcus was still holding his wife's hand. He didn't move. "Sir," the detective repeated, louder this time. "Step outside." They pulled him away. The neighbors watched through cracked doors as the man they all knew, the teacher, the husband, the kind soul, was led away in handcuffs. No one could believe it. Inside, officers combed the room. One of them shouted, "We found a handgun under the couch." That was all they needed to hear. Never mind that there were no fingerprints on the trigger. Never mind that Marcus had no history of violence. Never mind that there were no signs of a struggle. To them, the picture was clear: a domestic dispute gone wrong, a husband who snapped, a wife who paid the price, and a story the media would eat up by morning. Hours later, Marcus sat in a cold metal chair under a flickering light. His shirt was stained with dry blood. Detective Harlan started the recorder. "State your name for the record." Marcus's voice cracked. "Marcus Robinson. You understand why you're here?" "Because my wife is dead," Marcus whispered. The detective leaned forward. "Because you killed her." Marcus's head shot up. "That's not true. You expect us to believe someone broke into your apartment, fired a gun, and just disappeared in a thin air? I don't know what happened." Marcus cried. "I heard a shot, I saw the window break, and she just fell." but they didn't believe him. Hours turned into dawn. The same questions over and over. Each time he denied it, the detective grew more certain he was lying. When Marcus finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, Harlan turned to his partner and said quietly, "There it is. Guilt." But what they saw as guilt was grief. The kind of grief that doesn't fade, it burns deep and raw. If this story interests you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more powerful true stories to light. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. The next morning, every local channel carried the same headline: local teacher arrested for wife's murder. Reporters stood outside the police precinct. Students from Marcus's school were interviewed. "He was my favorite teacher. He couldn't have done that," one girl said, crying. But the narrative had already taken hold. A black man, a gun, a dead wife. It was an easy story to sell, especially to a system that never cared to look deeper. Within 48 hours, the district attorney filed formal charges for second-degree murder. Marcus sat in a cell, staring at his wedding ring. Every hour that passed felt like a lifetime. When his lawyer, Janelle Carter, finally came to see him, he looked like a ghost. "You have to believe me," he said. "I didn't kill Angela. I loved her." She nodded gently. "I believe you, Marcus. But right now, belief isn't enough. We need proof, and they're not looking for it." Outside the precinct, rain poured again just like that night. And across the street, from a window 2 buildings away, a 12-year-old boy named Ethan Miller sat on his bed, replaying something strange on his old digital camera. A flash of light, a shadow, a single gunshot echoing in the rain. He didn't understand what he'd captured. Not yet. But one day, that video would change everything. They say truth is a fragile thing, easily buried beneath fear, prejudice, and pain. For Marcus Robinson, the truth wasn't just buried. It was locked away, and the key was in the hands of a boy who hadn't yet realized he held it. If this story interests you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more powerful true stories to light. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. By the time Marcus Robinson's trial began, the city had already made up its mind. The headlines were merciless. Jealous husband turns killer. Teacher's rage ends in tragedy. Every news station ran the same photo. Marcus in handcuffs, his head down, eyes red from crying. No one saw the man behind the tears. They saw only what they wanted to see. To the world, he was already guilty. If this story interests you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more powerful, true stories to light. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. Marcus's lawyer, Janelle Carter, was a fierce public defender. Young, determined, and passionate about justice, but she was up against a mountain. The prosecution was armed with half-truths, assumptions, and a judge whose reputation preceded him, Judge Harold Whitman. Whitman was a man of old ideals, the kind who spoke about law and order with an iron fist. He wore his years on the bench like a crown. But underneath that crown lay bias, the kind that didn't need words to show itself. Day 1 of the trial. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, curious onlookers, even former students of Marcus. Angela's family sat on the left side, cold and silent. Marcus's mother and sister sat on the right, praying under their breath. The air was thick with tension. When Marcus was led in, dressed in a plain suit, the whispering began. Cameras flashed. He glanced once toward Angela's family. They didn't look back. Janelle leaned close and whispered, "Remember, Marcus, just tell the truth. That's all we can do." Marcus nodded, his voice barely a whisper. The truth's all I've got." The prosecution wasted no time. They painted a picture of rage and jealousy. They said Marcus had found out Angela was thinking of leaving him, a rumor built on nothing more than a friend's speculation. They spoke about the gun found under the couch, as though it was a smoking gun of guilt. The prosecutor, a man named Raymond Cole, paced before the jury and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is not just a crime of passion. It's a man who couldn't handle rejection. He ended his wife's life because he couldn't control his temper." He stopped and turned dramatically toward Marcus. "A man who took an oath to educate our children became a murderer in his own home." The crowd murmured. Some gasped. Marcus lowered his head, his fists clenched tight beneath the table. Then came Janelle's turn. She stood tall, calm, and collected. "The prosecution wants you to believe Marcus Robinson is a monster," she began. "But where is the evidence? No gunshot residue on his hands. No motive. No witnesses. Just assumptions and prejudice." She turned toward the jury. "This man called 911 himself. He tried to save his wife's life with his own hands. Does that sound like a killer to you?" Her words hung heavy in the air, but Judge Whitman's face was unmoved. When Janelle tried to suggest that the shot could have come from outside, that maybe Angela had been hit by a stray bullet, the judge interrupted. "Counselor," he said sharply, "the court will not entertain fantasies." Janelle frowned. "Your Honor, there is physical evidence that the shot trajectory." "Enough, Ms. Carter," he snapped. "Stick to the facts, not theories." Marcus looked up, disbelief in his eyes. The jury watched the exchange quietly. The judge's tone said it all. He wasn't interested in other possibilities. For days, the courtroom became a stage of half-truths. The prosecution brought in a ballistics expert who claimed the bullet's path was consistent with an indoor shot. Janelle tried to counter, but every objection was met with the same cold dismissal. When Marcus took the stand, he spoke through tears. "I love my wife," he said. "I'd never hurt her. We were happy that night. We were planning to go to the movies. And then I heard the shot." The prosecutor leaned forward. "You expect us to believe that someone else fired that shot, Mr. Robinson? From where?" "Mars." The courtroom laughed. Marcus's voice trembled. "From outside, through the window." "Convenient," the prosecutor sneered. "A mystery shooter with perfect aim, right through the glass?" Judge Whitman interrupted. "Mr. Cole, move on. We've heard enough." And just like that, Marcus's truth was brushed aside. Janelle fought until her voice cracked, but the system wasn't built to listen. When the closing arguments ended, she sat down beside Marcus, exhausted. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He looked at her, tears brimming in his eyes. "You did everything you could." The jury left the room. An hour passed, then two. When they returned, the foreman stood up, eyes downcast. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Marcus Robinson, guilty of second-degree murder." The sound sounded like thunder. Marcus's mother screamed. His sister fainted. Janelle stood frozen in disbelief. Marcus sat motionless. His hands trembled. He looked up at the judge, searching for mercy. There was none. Judge Whitman cleared his throat, his voice cold and deliberate. "Mr. Robinson, this court finds you guilty as charged. You have not only taken a life, but betrayed the trust of this community. I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The words echoed through the courtroom like a funeral bell. Marcus whispered, "Life?" as if he couldn't comprehend it. The bailiff grabbed his arm. Chains rattled. He looked one last time toward the empty seat where Angela's smile used to belong in his memories. He whispered, "I'm sorry, baby. I didn't do this." Then they led him away. The following days were a blur of grief. Marcus's mother couldn't stop crying. His sister lashed out at reporters, shouting that the system had failed him. But no one listened. The media called it justice served. A dangerous man off the streets. Inside his cell, Marcus counted the hours, each one heavier than the last. He replayed that night again and again. Her laughter, her last words, the sound of shattering glass. Every detail haunted him. Janelle visited once a week, her eyes red from crying. "I filed an appeal," she said softly, "but it'll take months." Marcus nodded slowly. "It won't change anything," he whispered. "They already made up their minds." He stared at the concrete wall. "You ever feel like the truth doesn't matter?" Janelle looked away. "More times than I can count. Outside the prison walls, life went on. But somewhere else, 2 buildings away from where Angela was killed, a young boy sat at his desk, staring at his old camera. His name was Ethan Miller. He had told no one what he'd seen that night, but curiosity gnawed at him. He replayed the footage again, slow motion, frame by frame. The image was grainy, but there it was, a flash coming from above Angela's apartment, not inside it. A faint silhouette on the rooftop, a rifle glinting under the rain. Ethan's heart raced. He turned the volume up, and beneath the thunder, he heard something, a faint metallic click, followed by the gunshot. He gasped. It came from outside. He told his mother. She didn't believe him. She thought he was imagining things. But Ethan couldn't shake it. So the next morning, the boy did something unthinkable. He took the bus downtown, straight to the courthouse. Inside, the sentencing was about to begin. Marcus Robinson stood before the judge, broken, exhausted, seconds away from being sent away for life. Then, a shout echoed through the hall. "Wait, wait." The doors burst open. Everyone turned. It was Ethan, drenched from the rain, clutching his camera. "I have proof," he yelled. "He didn't do it." Gasps filled the room. Reporters rushed forward. The judge pounded his gavel. "Order, order in the court." But Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "I saw it happen. I was taking pictures that night, and I recorded the shot." The room went silent. Even Marcus froze. The bailiff grabbed the boy, but Janelle jumped up. "Your Honor, please, let him speak." The judge hesitated. Whitman's voice wavered for the first time. "What kind of proof?" Ethan held up his camera, hands shaking. "A video. It shows where the shot came from." Janelle rushed to the clerk's desk, connecting the camera to the courtroom screen. The lights dimmed. The video flickered to life. The room held its breath. Rain poured on the screen. You could see the faint outline of Angela's window. Then a flash of light, but not from inside. From above. A rooftop. A shadow. A rifle. A single gunshot. Angela fell. The video shook in Ethan's small hands as he gasped off screen. When the clip ended, no one spoke. Marcus stared at the screen, tears streaming down his face. Janelle turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this man has been sitting in a cell for a murder he didn't commit." Whitman's gavel dropped from his hand, the sound echoing like thunder. The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Angela's family wept. But Marcus just sat there, stunned, whispering the same words over and over. "Thank you, God. Thank you." In that moment, everything changed. The truth that had been buried under bias, lies, and assumptions finally cracked through the surface. All because one boy refused to stay silent. The court adjourned in chaos. Investigators rushed to verify the footage. Within hours, it became clear Marcus Robinson was innocent. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of uncovering who had really pulled the trigger. And as the rain fell once again outside that courthouse, the winds of justice had begun to shift. Because now, the hunt for the real killer had just begun. If this story interests you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more powerful, true stories to light. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. For months, Marcus Robinson had sat in a dark cell, waiting for justice that never came. But on that stormy afternoon, when a young boy named Ethan Miller burst into the courtroom. The walls of lies began to crumble. The video he carried was more than evidence, it was redemption. Still, a question lingered. If Marcus didn't pull the trigger, then who did, and why? The moment the footage played, chaos erupted. Judge Whitman sat frozen in his chair, his pale knuckles gripping the bench. Prosecutor Cole's confident smirk vanished. Janelle Carter, Marcus's attorney, stood motionless, her eyes wide with shock and relief. Ethan, the brave little boy, trembled beside her as he whispered, "See, he didn't do it." Marcus, still in his prison jumpsuit, could barely breathe. Tears rolled down his face, his chest heaving with disbelief. For the first time in months, anyone, finally believed him. Janelle turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this video changes everything. I request that Mr. Robinson be immediately released pending a full reinvestigation." The judge hesitated, his voice cracking slightly. "The court will recess for review of this evidence." But Janelle wasn't waiting. "He's been wrongfully imprisoned, Your Honor. Every second he spends behind bars is another second of injustice." Whitman glanced at the screen again, at that single, damning flash of light from above the apartment. Then he slowly nodded. "Mr. Robinson," he said quietly, "you will be released under temporary supervision while we investigate this new evidence." The gavel struck once. The sound rang like a prayer. The prison doors opened the next morning. Marcus stepped out into the cold air, breathing freedom for the first time in nearly a year. Janelle was waiting by the gate, and behind her stood Ethan and his mother. Marcus knelt to the boy's level, his eyes glassy with emotion. "You saved my life," he said softly. "You had more courage than grown men." Ethan shrugged shyly. "I just told the truth." Marcus smiled, a small, broken smile, and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's all it ever takes." The case was reopened immediately. Detectives pored over the footage, analyzing every frame. They reconstructed the scene with precision, mapping out angles, distances, and possible sniper locations. And soon enough, the truth began to surface. The bullet's trajectory, the downward angle, the velocity, confirmed it couldn't have been fired from inside the apartment. It had come from an elevated position, most likely from the building across the street. Detective Raul Hernandez, one of the lead investigators, followed that lead. He climbed the old building's rooftop, now covered in dust and moss, and found something chilling: a spent shell casing. He bagged it carefully, calling out to his partner, "This is it. This is where the shot came from." The forensics team compared the casing to the bullet that killed Angela Robinson. It was a perfect match, but who had fired it? The search for the shooter led them into Angela's past, a life that Marcus had only known in fragments. Old text messages recovered from Angela's phone revealed that she'd once been in a serious relationship before marrying Marcus. A man named David Lang. He was older, charming, and according to Angela's friends, possessive. She'd broken it off years ago, claiming he'd become controlling. But as the detectives dug deeper, they discovered something darker. David had been following her. Emails, unanswered calls, messages filled with obsession. "I'll never let anyone else have you." One of the messages, sent just days before her death, read, "You think he can protect you? You're mine, Angela." Detective Hernandez stared at the screen. "We found our man." David Lang was nowhere to be found. He'd quit his job, sold his car, and vanished. For weeks, detectives combed through city records until a traffic camera finally picked him up in a small town 2 states away. When they arrested him, he didn't resist. He simply smiled and said, "I knew you'd come." At the interrogation table, his composure cracked. "Angela ruined my life," he muttered, his eyes cold. "She promised me forever." Detective Hernandez leaned in. "You waited outside her building. You set up on that roof. You shot her." David's jaw tightened. He stared at the table for a long moment, then whispered. She looked happy with him. I couldn't stand it. The confession came quietly, like a sigh. The detectives exchanged grim looks. It was over. When Marcus received the news, he broke down. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. Just tired. He sat in his small living room, the same place where he'd once been arrested, staring at Angela's photo. I told them, he whispered. I told them I didn't do it. Janelle sat beside him. The truth always comes out. Sometimes too late, but it comes. He nodded slowly. Too late for her. If this story interests you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more powerful, true stories to light. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. A week later, the courtroom was filled again, but this time, the energy was different. Marcus Robinson walked in not as a prisoner, but as a free man. The crowd rose as Judge Whitman took the bench, his face solemn. Whitman's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Mr. Robinson, this court owes you an apology. You were convicted under false pretenses. The evidence presented today clears you completely. He paused, then continued. On behalf of this court and this community, I am deeply sorry. Marcus said nothing. He simply nodded, tears streaking down his face. When the gavel fell one last time, the room erupted in applause. Reporters, activists, strangers, all standing for the man they once condemned. Ethan, sitting in the front row, smiled proudly. After the hearing, Marcus walked outside into the sunlight. Cameras flashed, microphones crowded him, but he ignored them all. He turned to Janelle and said softly, "You know what hurts most?" "What?" she asked. "That she'll never see this day." Janelle placed a hand on his shoulder. "She sees it, Marcus. Somewhere she does." He nodded, looking up at the sky. For a long moment, he stood in silence, the wind brushing against his face, the world finally still. The city would later call it the case that changed everything. Judge Whitman was quietly removed from the bench after an ethics review revealed years of biased conduct. Prosecutor Cole resigned under public pressure, and Janelle Carter became a national figure, an attorney who fought not just for justice, but for truth. As for Ethan Miller, the boy who changed everything, he was given a Community Bravery Award. When asked why he came forward, he said simply, "Because I knew it was wrong." Sometimes, heroes don't wear capes. They just carry cameras. Months later, Marcus returned to teaching. The same classroom where he once taught poetry and history now held a different weight. His first lesson wasn't from a book. It was from his own story. He stood before his students and said, "The world will tell you what to believe about someone before you even meet them. But truth doesn't hide forever. It just waits to be seen." The room was silent. Every student listened. Then Marcus smiled. "Now, let's talk about second chances." He visited Angela's grave that weekend. The grass was wet from rain, the sky pale with morning light. He knelt, placing a single white rose on her headstone. "I miss you," he whispered. "They finally know the truth." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, peace washed over him. Not joy, not triumph, just peace. Because justice, when it finally arrived, came heavy with memories. Marcus Robinson's story became a reminder that justice delayed is never truly denied if truth keeps breathing. That a single act of courage, even from a child, can expose a system's flaws. And that love, even in death, can outlast the noise of hate. As the camera fades on Marcus, standing alone before Angela's grave, the narrator's voice closes the story. Sometimes, the truth whispers for years before anyone listens. But once it's heard, it echoes forever. If this story interests you, don't forget to like this video, share with others, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more powerful true stories to light. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this.